Hey everyone, welcome to the Aeon 14 podcast. My name is James S. Aaron, and I'm joined by the Aeon 14 team. And today we are not including our illustrious leader, Michael Cooper. Sad.
He's grounded.
That was a bunch of sad faces if you're watching the video. If you're on audio, you'll just
talk about him.
imagine. I know, we all get to talk about him. So we're going to be talking about all things Aeon 14. If you are newly joining us, from the books, the science behind the series, the ideas, the cool stuff, the kick-ass stuff, and whatever else you, the readers, want to hear about. So let us know in the Facebook group, send us an email. I think we're now on YouTube, iTunes, Podomatic, and then always Facebook as well. So we are spreading to the universe. On board today, we've got our editor, Jen McDonald, Lisa Richmond, and me. I think I already said my name. I'm James. How's everybody doing?
Great.
And like we said, today is The Cat is Away, So the Mice Will Play episode. We're going to be talking about Michael behind his back while he and Jill are off playing in Florida. Or actually, I think they do a really good job of combining playing with working because they've also been at it's the Indie Book Fest, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which Michael put some photos up in the Facebook group, and he's just gone full on with the banners, and I think he had like probably 60% of all the books, and that filled a 6-foot table pretty easily.
I think he won most books on table.
Yeah.
I was surprised the table wasn't like bowing in the
I know.
It was like bowing in the middle. I was like, what is happening?
Well, it's funny. He's really upping his con game. So I think this is not as in like conning people, as in like going to conventions. And because I think he's getting ready for some of the bigger things maybe in the future. So this has been a good practice event. Okay, so before we get into that, though, let's do some updates. And it's funny because Michael just pulls this stuff off the top of his head. I went to Amazon and I've, getting all my ducks in a row here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pre-orders going on right now. And that's even, Proxima Centauri is coming out on Thursday. Which is
then we'll have Tal Ceti as a pre-order at that point. So.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll be at 10 pre-orders there. So that's a lot of stuff. Like, I think it's really easy to lose. Maybe it's something we'll talk about at some point when we get into project management, which would be super exciting to me anyway. But 10 pre-orders, that's crazy. So these are not necessarily chronological, although Proxima Centauri is the next one coming out, and I'm very excited about that. I got to read a good portion of it, and I don't have time to read, so when I read something, like physically read it, that, like, to me, that's the best compliment I can give. And so I'm really excited about this book.
You guys are gonna love it and hate it. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's true. The development of the bad person is like really enjoyable.
Yeah.
Okay, so Orion War 7 Fallen Empire is coming up. We've got
that's actually Precipice of Darkness.
Oh, I'm sorry, Precipice of Darkness. That's going to change. You're right.
That's going to be sent my way for editing on Tuesday, and I will have that back to him after the first pass on Friday.
Sweet.
So that one's coming up.
New Fennington Station, Cocoa Crush. That's the Cozy Mystery series that takes place in an expanse. So it's really out there stuff. But if you love cozy mystery, and humor, it's a really fun series. Tanis Richards Operative.
That'll be the following week.
Yep. And then Tanis Richards Blackest Night is also on the list.
Right after that.
And that's the week after that. Those are coming out in consecutive weeks.
And those are both Tanis origin stories, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's 2 and 3.
Critical Inertia. So a new Keeley book. That's coming out late September. Keeley, for anybody who hasn't read, well, I pronounce it Keeley. Is it Kylie?
Keeley or Kylie Rhodes, one of the two.
Yeah, I know.
Kylie Rhodes.
Yeah. In my mind, it's whatever I want it to be. A new Rika book coming out in October. Very excited about that. Rika Unleashed. Tyre with J.J. Green. That's going to be the follow-up to Kanan. And then A Surreptitious Rescue of Friends and Foes. And the name
love that freaking title.
The title is growing on me. It is.
Is that a Jessica book?
Yeah, Perseus Gate. And then Vesta Burning, which is going to be the second in the Legends of the Sentience Wars, which will wrap up or kind of be a bookend, I guess, to the Sentience Wars Origins. So for everybody that was really digging Proteus Bridge, this is going to follow up with some characters from Proteus Bridge, like Crash the Parrot, who's getting a much bigger role now. And before we get into the first Sentience War. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
Also, the art book is out. The Michael's
Although
going
it
to
goes
have,
on sale. Yeah.
or is it on? It's not on sale
It
yet.
goes on sale on September.
No, it drops to $19.99.
It drops to
Yeah.
19. Yeah.
It's for sale now,
So
but the price
goes on sale. Yeah.
Yeah.
Drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Michael said he would also have signed copies of that on the Etsy store. So I'm not looking at the Etsy store or Society 6. But I think we mentioned it last time with Society 6. Like, definitely either load up your cart and then wait a day, or sign up for their list, because they're always doing either free shipping or 25% off, like 20 to 25% off on their stuff. So unless you're in a real hurry, which that's cool too, give it, like, choose what you want, give it a day, and you'll get some deals on the prices there. So
There's some great merch over there, though, on Society.
yeah, I mean, they can pretty much put logos on anything, which is, or at least awesome art on anything. Like they have wall hangings, like tapestries now. I was checking those out. I don't know, because the art from the Sentience Wars Origins is my favorite, and I love to put it on everything. So I was really seriously thinking about a tapestry. It's like, where could I hang this in my house?
Yeah, bedspread. Yeah.
I
Wrap
know.
yourself in the sunny skies.
Yep. Let's see, Patreon. I don't think we've had new updates this last week, except there are 8K covers up there, which I don't even have a device that can do 8K. But for all your wallpaper needs, that's, I think, the lowest level subscribers get access to all the cool wallpapers and whatnot. We also post the podcasts over there, so if it's easier for you to track it in one place, they're up at Patreon as well, or YouTube. So if you've seen it on YouTube and you dig it there, that's a good place to subscribe to, or as well, I should say.
Are you going to mention the newsletter?
I was not. Go ahead.
The newsletter came out. A new newsletter came out, I think, this morning, and he's got some sales in there. So if you're not a newsletter subscriber, you can go to, is it Aeon14.com is where he...
Yeah, there's a link on
There's
on
a
the
link
website
there where you can subscribe, and you get, secret deals. Sometimes you get freebies, free little short stories, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think he's going to put more short stories on Patreon. So I think we're up to 40 subscribers now. So yeah,
after a month of a overarching story for free on Patreon.
Yeah,
that you can only get on Patreon.
Yeah.
Totally.
And Michael has been really focused on what kind of channels we can look at outside of Amazon. So Patreon right now is a good place. So he's putting energy there.
Yeah.
So those are updates. If there's anything that we're missing or that you'd like to hear about more on a regular basis, let us know in the Facebook group, and we can start tracking that stuff. I don't know what else. I wear the same shirt every time, so we don't need to change. It's not the same shirt. It's the same color shirt.
I'm kind of the same way. It's cold in here, so I always wear my jean jacket.
Jean jackets have come back around, so.
Did they ever go out of
It's
style?
very stylish. This is true. If you had true style, they never went away. So we wanted to do something different this time, and Jen has come up with a top 10 list of her favorite things about Aeon 14. And so we're going to...
Drum roll, please.
I know. We're going to start with that. And then later on, we've got some questions talking about working in Aeon 14 while Michael is not here, so we can talk behind his back. And we have, I don't know, did we get permission? Does it matter? Do we want to keep our jobs?
Fine.
I know.
Yeah.
His wife Jill did
There's nothing we
suggest
can
certain
say.
things that we're not going to do, like secret things.
Embarrassing
about
super
him.
secret.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
We're not going that. We promised Michael that we would play nice.
Play nice, right?
Well, you promised, and I guess I'll go along.
James, it's been fun, but I think it's time for us to end this relationship. Okay, so what do we need to do? We need like a drum roll. I know. Top 10 favorite things about Aeon 14, as listed by Jen McDonald. editor for the series. In no particular order, which is also important, although the last one might be slightly more important. More important, I think, if there was a percentage. I won't even get to that. But anyway.
Don't make me think in numbers.
I know.
Numbers.
Number 10 in the top 10 things that Jen loves most about Aeon 14 would be complex characters. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think it's really important when you're presented with a book that you're reading for enjoyment, that you like being inside the people's heads that you're inside of. And I think if there's not a lot to that character, it's not a very enjoyable experience and it gets boring really quickly. Aeon 14 is really an incredible just pool of amazing complex characters. And they come from all different walks of life and backstories and preferences and fetishes and just completely different personalities. And it's just really amazing that all of these people are springing from like a limited number of minds, you know.
Strengths and fatal flaws. I think fatal flaws are important. They make the character really interesting too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's just so much to, I mean, any character, you can pick any character, even the minor ones, and like, you know, at least one detail about them that makes them interesting or, you know, distinct. And I think that's really important and amazing. And I love it. And it's, you know, it's hard. I
think it starts with
emotional.
The world building too, that Michael put a lot of thought into, that the world creates the characters in a way, or at least gives a really nice font. You know, if you think about the world as the soil and the characters grow out of the soil, that it makes it really easy to do that, I think, because there's a lot of challenges. And I mean, even with you know, like the Sentience Wars and the times that Lisa and I are writing in, there's still a lot of just good conflict and good just human stuff going on that makes it really easy, you know.
It's both nature and nurture.
Right.
It is. I mean, you know, because so much of their environments influence, you know, there are limiting factors that come into play. So.
And you can really see the difference too. Like I can see the difference when I did Proteus Bridge. I could see where Ngoba and Fuja were coming from. Is that right, Fuja? Okay. I could see how they had been created by the world that raised them, right? They were a little more rough and tumble, a little more gritty than, say, Tanis, who has, like, she doesn't strike me as gritty. Like, she's very refined, and she doesn't mind getting dirty, but she doesn't strike me as gritty. I don't know if that makes any sense. I know these are words coming out of my brain, but they're very, very different. And that comes from the culmination of their experiences as well as their goals, what they're trying to accomplish, what they want for themselves.
Right.
And the fact that these characters have goals and motivations, and they're people that don't have bodies is really how I think of it. When I'm reading a book, like, these are real people that exist. They just aren't a physical.
They're not present.
Yeah.
They're just not physically present with you.
Right. Yeah. And not everybody can achieve that, but this universe does a fantastic job of really filling out their characters.
They're not, a lot of times what I say is they're not Teflon. Because bad things and by that I mean, you know, you read some books and the Teflonness, that's not a word, is it, of the characters means that no bad thing can happen. No, you know, the good guys, you know, just sail through life and nothing bad sticks to them.
It's
yeah. And so here you have consequences. I mean, if, you know, bad things can happen and a good character can get injured.
Yeah.
Sometimes people die.
Yeah. And reputations get damaged. Like, still trying to live down the Butcher of Toro.
Right.
You know, like, these are real struggles that real humans in our world go through.
Yeah.
So to see that reflected in the literature is just, it's super important, I think. And it's just mind blowing to me. I love it. I love it.
So complex characters, number 10. I shouldn't number them, but I guess I have to because that's the way that it's. Okay, the next one.
The first thing we're going to talk about is complex characters.
I know.
Yeah.
The next one
thing we're going to talk about
in Jen's list of top 10 favorite things would be the emotion in the series. So
yeah, evoking emotion from readers is really important, I think, to keep them engaged and keep them interested. And at least for me, I'm a really like emotional person, and I wear them right out loud. So if I'm reading in public and something is funny, I will laugh out loud in public. I will cry in public if I'm so moved, by the book. Like I just, and for me, if a book is not making me laugh or cry or groan or feel dread or excitement or like the, oh no, I know what's coming feeling, like I stop reading. I give a book about 50 pages to evoke some kind of, to pull one of my heartstrings. They have 50 pages. If they can't do that in the first 50 pages, I'm not going to give them the next 150 or 200,
Yeah.
And so emotion is just really important because I read to feel and experience and live a life that I'm not currently living. And I think emotion is a huge part of that.
One little insight into Jen for you guys, which I think is kind of cool. When she edits a book, we do it. The system that we use allows her to make comments on the side, and some of the comments she makes, it's kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000, so I get this, oh no, or I knew it, or shut up, or leave her alone, you jerk, or
I remember writing those.
Me giggling out loud. It's just it's awesome. It's really, really great. So anyway, little insight.
Emotion has honestly been my biggest challenge. Like I come to SF as
Are you a robot?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, like I spent a good part of my life suppressing emotion in the Army. So I don't like if you're in pain, you drink more water, take some Motrin, and shut up. It's like you don't.
Yeah.
You weren't issued emotions, so why? And I'm like on the extreme of things, but when it comes to writing, like that's just not the first thing I'm thinking about. Like I'm not always centered in the gut of the character. I'm in the head, and thinking about like what ideas and what's going to happen next, and so the biggest feedback that I've gotten from the beginning was like, what is the character feeling? What are they thinking? Or not even what they're thinking. What do they feel, and how do their emotions affect what they think? And so really changing that that center of control, I guess. And I've been in writing groups with romance authors, and I've learned so much from romance authors because, like, I'll have two characters in a situation, and like the chemistry between them is not what I'm thinking about. Whereas the romance author's like, how do they feel about each other? What do they when that person says that? Why isn't that one responding? I'm like, well, because it's not important. They're trying to blow this thing apart or whatever, And so that's something I've learned. Like, really tried to change my focus in, and it's I don't know. I feel like if there's anything that I've grown more in, in the 5 years I've been doing like hammering fiction, that's been the one thing. But we were going to talk about. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to. I have my question. Can I ask my question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I have a question. Okay, so and this is how I framed it up before we started recording. Jen and I don't know if James has too. We've done theater, and one of the things that always surprises me when you're standing on a stage is that you're in the middle of delivering whatever line it is, and depending upon the audience, they can laugh in places you never expected. And every audience is different, and so sometimes humor is, you didn't intend for humor for a line to be funny, and people find it funny. And so my question for James is, some of the people in the Facebook fan page have commented on some of the things that James wrote in Proteus Bridge. And my question to you is, did you intend for all of this to be funny? Did some of the stuff that they found funny surprise you? And how do you handle humor in general? And go.
Humor is really hard. I mean, it's like we were talking about. I think a humor anthology is especially hard because it's so subjective, and So I do, one of the things I do for my job is I get the super fun task of doing active threat training for my campus, which is a terrible subject to talk about. And so you try and make it like, you try and have a subject that you might try to make light, but then realize that this isn't the kind of subject you can make light. And so sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not. And sometimes you'll be talking to a group and you're right, they'll laugh at something. They're like, why is that funny? And then over time you try, for me at least, I try and pick apart what it was about the thing that was funny. Or if it's something where I did try to make the situation lighter, like I have a workplace violence video where I started out by asking if anybody in HR, so I can see if I can pick on the HR people. But sometimes you like really lead the joke, and that will get people to laugh, and other times, but I don't know, when it comes to, like, for me personally, like, I have a hard time with slapstick. Some of my favorite books when I was a kid was like Fritz Leiber's Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, or like stuff where the characters are just doing witty banter, like the David Eddings books. I'm trying to think of some other just like really dialogue driven, where people are kind of going back and forth with a conversation. That kind of stuff really I find really funny. I have a harder time with the kind of the Terry Pratchett, like just telling an amusing or what seems like an amusing story, because I think that's harder to get right. Like some people are really into it and they like that light tone, and it's hard to tell. Whereas with dialogue, you can really, like, the conversation is funny, and what a character says to me is funny anyway. And I guess I have kind of a dry sense of humor, and so when somebody says something that I think of as being like a dry or sarcastic response, like, it's funny to me, but then other people read it and are like, whatever, they don't get it, So, like, I think I just try it, and if it sounds funny to me, I kind of run with it. And like, I guess that I could talk more about the things that people haven't said anything about that I like. Proteus Bridge includes a whole like psychedelic hallucination, where people are seeing like the main character sees pterodactyls flying around the space station, and battle corgis, like giant.
I love the battle corgis.
All this crazy stuff, and like, and I kind of created this drug, this like inhalant drug called Briki, where you inhale the pollen from this flower, and people are just like, yeah, sure, that works. Like,
you're like, got anything, guys?
Yeah, I mean, the whole game, the idea of Crash is basically based on Smash Brothers. I mean, that's kind of what I was playing off of. Like, I guess like maybe our audience just doesn't play Smash Brothers because nobody has said anything about that. And for my household, like, Smash Brothers is huge. Like, that's all anybody's talking about. And so Crash, crash, like repetition of words, like that's one thing that is funny to me, but other people are like, why are you doing that? That makes no sense. Or I had a joke in there about Tina, which is actually a Saturday Night Live reference. There was a character. No, it was, what were they making fun of? I think it was Brady Bunch, where Tina.
Marsha.
Yeah. So, and that was one. It was like, whatever.
No one got it.
Gets it, they get it. That's fine. And so, like, you try and put those things in there and just kind of see what's going to hook, But like, I didn't expect people to like Crash the Parrot as much as they did, and so I've really been like, I actually felt like a gamble too, because it was going to be like, I don't care about things from a parrot's perspective, like and then I even was thinking, because I have a friend who's read a lot of my work, and she is. She writes furry and is incredibly serious about anthropomorphic fiction, and has taken it to a whole nother level. And I was thinking about the fact that I wouldn't have written this without her influence, but I was also being kind of, but I mean, there's a lot of humor in that genre as well. So I don't know. It's when I think about like trying to approach, like, I'm not the kind of writer that would approach humor in a really formulaic way. Like, I'm going to nail the joke, I'm going to preload the joke and then hit the punchline. And like, I've read about doing that stuff, and it's not something that's easy for me to do naturally. Right. So I don't know. I guess I try and like talk about that thinking about emotion. Like, I do, one thing I think with emotion is you do have to earn it. Like, if it's something that's going to be funny, like, you can't try and pepper jokes into like a terrible, like, if you're going to put jokes in a terrible situation, they need to be related to how the characters feel. And so sometimes you'll have like background things happening, and if the characters are just quipping on top of that and it's disconnected, I think that works against it. But if they're in a stressful situation and this sucks, we could die. I mean,
Yeah.
in the Army, it was all about that. Like, what level of suck is this? I don't know. This is probably about a level of suck as, like, I don't know. It's kind of,
3.0.
I
Yeah.
know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of like make yourself feel better about something by like,
By
what could be,
cracking a joke
what could
about
be
it.
worse? Yeah, and making a
Right.
joke about it. And so maybe
Yeah.
that's where my humor comes from as
Yeah.
well, too, I guess.
And I think you hit it on the head when you said you have to earn the emotion. And it's the same way, like you said, not just with humor, but with climaxes too. And boy, that could have been taken wrong.
Those also have to be earned.
But when you really, really, really want someone to be horrified, or you really want someone to grieve, boy, you can't just have them turn and start yelling. There has to be a motivation behind it. And I think there were two places specifically in Proxima where I attempted to do that, and I think by the texts that I got from Jen, I might have I'm not sure, Jen.
Well,
you are muted.
I do.
It's different for different people too. Like what seems, like out of nowhere to Jen, like someone else would be like, yeah, that's fine with me, but that's where for me at least, I have to really like, okay, if this isn't working, invested and if this isn't working for this person, I don't take it as like, it's not working at all. It just means I need to think about the different things for other people. So,
and I was picking on Jen because she was one of the first ones to read it. And
okay.
If she really reacted the way I wanted her to react, the way I want the reader to react, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
The two instances where I really made bad things happen.
Yeah.
When I yelled at you, were you talking about?
Yeah. She yelled at me. Mm-hmm.
I yell at Cooper all the time, and he makes fun of me. He's like, I always know where you are in the book by how you're yelling at me and what you're yelling at me.
Yes, I can verify that. It's great. It's awesome.
Well, you don't want to manipulate the reader, but that's like kind of the best response you can get, right? Like,
right. Yeah. It means, okay, I succeeded in creating the emotion I was trying to craft.
Exactly.
In that spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's next?
So next one is gender equality in both the field and in the adventure.
Yeah. I love that.
So something as a woman that has been seriously lacking is badass women going on adventures. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Aeon 14 is like single-handedly trying to make up for this lack in the literary field of badass women going on adventures. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I fucking love that. I mean, sorry, I really love that a lot. Whoa, sorry. Yes, as you can tell, this is something I'm very passionate about. I think it's really important that we see good, complex women in positions of power, like Tanis Richards and Rika, and see them making these hard choices and see people going along with them and believing in them. And I know they get pushed back sometimes, but when they get pushed back, it's not usually because they are a woman. And I think that's really important. If someone is pushing back, it's because they think it's a bad idea, or they think it can be done differently, or consequences, or whatever. But there are so many. I think at this point, there's more main women than men in these books. And I really, really appreciate that, because I think that's part of what makes these so relatable for me, is being inside a woman's head for most of it. But I mean, there's all kinds of women, and there's some that I don't relate to as much, and that's people being people, humans are gonna human, right? Isn't that what we say? So, but I really love the emphasis on lead women in this universe, and I think it's really important, both in the genre or in the world of fiction, and in science fiction especially.
Yeah, women can math.
Women
Right.
can totally math and rocket science.
Well, and I think Michael has kind of explained, like he has a very long explanation of his thought process of how he came to this. To me, it's pretty simple. It's just let's just get to equal. I don't know, like how many organizations you look at where the gender split is just not even close to equal. Like it doesn't even reflect what is actually in society, and
Right.
things won't actually even be like normal until we're close to that, and then like it could start being some kind of debate, looking at Congress and things like that. But that why isn't that again? I think that's the most interesting kind of cognitive leap, is to get to a place where, and this is the thing that I actually have the hardest time with, is when Michael imagines a future where Tanis is a woman who didn't necessarily grow up with fear or having to think about, because I spent a lot of my work in thinking about those things, like not wanting people to be victimized and how that changes their perspective on things. And there are some people that just cannot see the world that way and don't understand why someone makes the decisions they do. And so imagining that world is harder, but I think that's really interesting too. And I think that could make the books or the stories, I guess, and the characters more enjoyable that way. But I think it is pretty clearly understood that like Tanis is, a warrior goddess in a lot of ways,
Yeah. But again, and I'm kind of digressing here, but
Yeah.
the whole process of the whole progression of going from dystopian to utopian exists in Aeon 14, and I think that's cool. Okay,
Yeah.
and now back to ladies, or the gender equality, which is what this is your third of the top 10 that you mentioned, Jen, and I think it's so important. I think it's what drew me to Aeon 14 in the first place. I know it was because it's something that I'm very passionate about, being and I've mentioned it before, being a pilot. I'm one of very, very few women on the planet who is, but it's not just that. It's, when I was in engineering and physics classes, when I was in college, I could be one of only 4 women in my class. And I think that's a situation that, as you said, James, needs to change. And we have STEM programs that are working to do that, but we are not there yet. And I think this kind of a universe presents a reality that we hope will occur someday.
And I want to tie this in. This is another item on my list, but I want to tie it in now. On my list is role models. And that's honestly part of the gender equality thing. My boyfriend has a 12-year-old daughter, and I read to her, and we read together, and we talk about what we're reading. And it's really important to me that this creative, amazing, imaginative girl that I am having a hand in raising has an idea that she can be more than what she is. And
that her reach can exceed her grasp.
Yes.
And should always.
So she's around a lot when I'm editing, and so I'll be reacting to things out loud like I do, and she's like, oh, what's going on? And so I'll kind of talk to her about it. I don't talk to her about everything because I don't think she's ready for Aeon 14.
Not ready for cheeky yet.
No.
Yeah.
No. But someday she will be. And she'll be ready for Rika, and she'll be ready for Tanis, and she'll be ready for Jessica, and she'll be ready for Sarah, and she'll be ready for all of these amazing, complex, badass women who are vulnerable, but also kicking ass and taking names. And they are each their own person, and they're strong, and they get to decide their own fate, their own future. And I think it's really, really important for younger girls to see that. And as things exist right now, like the books that I've read with Adelaide are like the Harry Potter series, and now we're going through Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. And a lot of these are told from the male perspective. Yes, Hermione Granger is a badass, but the books are about Harry. Right. So he would not be where he was without Hermione. That's a different conversation. And the the home for peculiar children is told from a male perspective, even though a lot of the capable characters and the Imbrines are women, but we don't see the world through their eyes. We're coming at it from the male scope. And so I think the Aeon 14 books are really important because we're seeing these strong female characters from the female scope. We get to be inside of their head, and that's going to be really important for girls as they're growing up when they start reading this.
Well, I think the task of science fiction is to imagine the future, right? It's like it's built into it. And so like it's really interesting to me when we think about something like the Star Trek communicator, and something that is kind of is an idea of the future at this point, what, 40, more than that, 60 years ago. We're getting close, and now we have it. And so you have to imagine that future, and so you have to create, like, it does go more than just entertainment, where as ideas enter the kind of collective consciousness. And
that's not just you saying that. I mean, we actually have proof points where the guy who created the Motorola flip phone admitted that his inspiration came from Star Trek.
Right.
So, I mean, we know, we have proof that what we're doing has influenced the world.
Yes.
And, it's kind of funny. Like I have lots of marketing ideas, and we get to like why, so I like kind of bounce this stuff off Michael all the time. And I think like one of the biggest things when we get worried about Amazon and sales channels and stuff like that, like I think the biggest thing we can do as a group is create the community around Aeon 14, because it's the community that keeps the ideas alive. And when you think about the life of a book, it's one thing to write. Like, interestingly, the stats came out, or I was reading some stats recently about Amazon sales, and 50% of science fiction ebook sales are books that are older than 10 years or older. So that means that people are continuing to read books like classics of the genre that have continued to be alive and living in people's minds. Like, something that has changed in ebooks is that it's no longer a physical object. So if I download an ebook with an updated cover, it doesn't matter if it's Philip K. Dick, which was written 40 years ago at this point. To me, it's still a new book, but that community around it has continued. And so what can we do to keep the ideas and the books and everything about Aeon 14 alive and growing? Because even if we think about the fact that Amazon might be one market, there's still everybody that's not on Amazon, and then eventually the audio and the TV and all that other stuff that like keeps the ideas alive. And it's the ideas that I think continue pushing these things into the future. And one thing before we leave this idea that I did want to note, like I think it's easy to tease Michael about kind of his pedantic answer to why he really gender equality is important to him, but it is. I want to it's really based in like strongly held thought. He's really thought it through, which I think goes a long way, because like he's gotten plenty of people that have attacked him about this, and he will it's almost, I don't want to tease him, but it's almost like the way that he approaches the explanations. It's like, well, don't go look at the science if you really want to argue about this. But there it is. We can debate the validity of science, but it's science. So,
and are we, before we leave both gender equality and role models, because I think we kind of combined those two. One of the things I want to point out is it's not just, I mean, you look at Sarah, you look at Jessica, you look at Tanis, you look at Katrina, you tend to think of women who are strong as soldiers, but then and Kara, and you then you go and you look at people like Fuja, and even though she's an AI, Shannon in my books is an engineer. I mean, so it's not just strong women who are physically strong, but they are mentally strong, and they are they that's just as important to us as writers.
And I want to tie this in a little bit too. I can't believe it's not on my list, but it is something I think about very often, is not only the gender equality, but the championing of the LGBTQ community. It's so present, so commonplace in the future, and no one thinks twice about it. And it's, I want that future for so many of my friends. And it makes me really happy to see that, that it's not a focus in the book, but it is there, and it is
It's acknowledging it.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's
okay, this is
acknowledging and accepting it and
part
not
of the world.
making a big deal out of it. Like no one looks twice at, Katrina and Juwasa being together, or Jessica and Trist having been married, or, any of that. And I really do love that a lot. Not only for myself, but for all the people, again, the role models, it's so important that this is more in the public sphere, so that people we love stop being endangered for the way that they are. And I think through literature is it's a path to acceptance. And
it speaks to the fact that words have power.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so our next one is education.
Speaking of words.
Speaking of words, right.
Something that I really like is how much I have to look up when I'm editing these books. It expands my vocabulary. It expands my understanding of the world. And I think that's really important because I'm not in school anymore, and I haven't been for over a decade. But I loved school, and reading these books kind of makes me feel like I'm back there in my like comfort zone, in my safe space. And it reminds me, it's very humbling too, because it reminds me how much I still don't know. But I love it that every book I read, I learn something new. Every book. That is not an exaggeration. And I think that's really important. And sometimes I'm learning while I'm laughing, which is the easiest thing to do. And sometimes I'm not laughing, but I'm still learning, and that's okay too. But I'm getting an education from these books, and I think that makes it more interesting and more valuable.
I had a real learning moment with Proteus Bridge, actually, where we were trying to think about how, a parrot would fly a ship, which I didn't want to make a huge part of it, but Lisa schooled me on how a bird might actually think about applying flight mechanics to orbital mechanics. And so that was a fun little thing we got to put in there.
And he even asks, like, why am I more equipped to fly this ship than you are? He asks that of the AI.
Yeah. It's so much fun. I think I've told you guys, one of my favorite quotes on the planet is a coffin is just a rut with the ends kicked out. And really, truly, if you stop learning, you die. I mean, you have to keep learning. It's just, it's to me, I have to keep learning. It's just such a rich, it's what feeds me. And it just kills me when, I hear girls say, oh, I can't do math. I can't do engineering. I can't do science. That's so hard. No, it has nothing to do with your body parts or lack thereof. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
And everyone can learn. Everyone has the same, up here, everyone has the same capabilities. It's what you choose to do with it.
And interest too is a
well, you get socialized out of. I mean, I had a math teacher that he was a messed up person, but he basically told the whole class, like, why are you so stupid, you can't understand this. And I didn't take math again until I got to college, and then I had an amazing teacher that made me love math. And so it's really interesting how people internalize, like, as you get older, like, just think about that. Learning it can create fear, because it's a fear of the unknown. I need to center myself and protect myself. And by learning, I'm changing my identity, right? Or I'm allowing my identity to be changed.
That's a good point.
And that can be scary for some folks. And so they don't want to invite in change. And that's why I'd rather double down on my ignorance per se than invite a new idea in and kind of engage with it. And,
boy, that's a good point, James.
I try and I don't know, you really got to just be open to that and have, I don't know, I think as adults, like, especially and this has happened, I see it a lot, like in Michael's reviews, where some people they just want to attack the idea rather than kind of engage with it. Like, that's wrong. Well, okay. I mean, that's the whole idea, right? We're trying to figure these things out, and we're kind of engaging it with fiction. So you might base a whole fictional idea on something that you don't buy, and that's fine. There are plenty of stories out there that, what do they call them, a balloon story, where you pop that one idea and the whole story just falls apart. But you have to as long as you accept it and it's a fun story. And I think that's where tying it back into the characters and all the other fun things about it. If you can't buy the fact that, like, most spaceships in 2800 are going to run on hydrogen and deuterium, like, no, that won't happen because this, and this, and like, well, okay, that's fine. I know it's a possibility.
I mean, that's why Field of Dreams was such a fantastic movie. It's willing suspension of disbelief. And my husband, who is a physicist, does it all the time. It's the only reason it's the only way he can read my books.
But that's,
it's
I think
okay.
And that's engaging with an idea. Like, you're willing yourself to learning, at least has to be to engage, honestly with an idea. And if you didn't like it, then let's have a conversation about why. I don't know. I mean, it's been fun to see people that are actually in the Facebook group, people that are really, excited about the ideas. And even if we have something like, nah, that'll never work, at least there's a debate about it, which is really fun for me.
And I think interest is a big part of the education also, because you're gonna go after the knowledge that you want. So when I'm looking things up, I'm much more likely to look up a word I don't know than to do the math on some of the numbers that are thrown out, because I'm not a math brain. I tried, but I don't want to. I don't think in numbers. I don't want to think in numbers. I'm okay not doing that. I'm much more a words person, and I'm fine with that. So I'm much more likely to look up a word than do the math or look up a scientific journal article or something like that, because I want to know more about this word.
Like the alternate definition of the word sport.
What?
Like the alternate definition of the word sport.
Yes.
Well, which means a mutation.
Right. No, I just hadn't heard it in the books before. And so it wasn't canon yet. And because we had a book about Jason Andrews already, and I was like, why wasn't that brought up in that book?
Because I didn't think about it.
Okay. So that's a different conversation. But yes. So I have to, look up alternative definitions for things to find out what's going on.
There's some Canadianisms in there too. Like perseverate is now one of my favorite words. I call it a thought loop.
Perseverate.
But yeah. Michael threw that. I was like, this is not a word. What is this?
I know, I had to go look at it too.
Like, that's a word. I use it all the time. Like, I don't remember reading that word, but now it jumps out at me.
He's used it multiple times.
Yeah.
It's one of his favorites for sure.
So we've kind of combined, I guess, the science with education.
I like how much science is in these books, even though that's not really how my brain works. This is more, it's science fiction with a heavy science dose, which I know many people appreciate. And that's all I wanted to say on that.
Well, that kind of gets us to size and continuity, which are kind of related.
What do you think I mean by size?
I would call that scope, or I think there's a grand vision there, which is really, it's funny when you think about like far future stuff, like a lot of science fiction, actually, like, what's the horizon of the idea, right? Like, how far in the future can we imagine? And I think a lot of people tend to imagine like 1,000 years, because we can kind of think about what, we can mentally go back 1,000 years pretty easily, or mentally associate ourselves with the Romans or even the Sumerians or whatever. But the idea of imagining 9,000 years in the future, like, that's the scope of that, and kind of the chutzpah of that too is pretty cool. So that's something I have a hard time doing, actually. So I really appreciate that Michael has been able to do that.
And I think that ties in possibilities also. Possibilities is another thing on my list. There's so many because of the scope of the universe, and because we're going forward and backward and everywhere in between. There's so many stories still to be told, so many people still to meet, so many adventures still to have. And I love that. I love that so much, because there's no end in sight. And I really appreciate that.
That's something that I would say like really appealed to me about the world in general, was that there wasn't an even spread of things. Like, it's not necessarily a Star Trek world where everybody has replicators and, like, it's a broad, like, maybe Tanis is the first person we meet and the Intrepid is our first introduction, but pretty rapidly we get a sense of like that first time when you realize that the Intrepid's technology was better than what was in 9,000, was like, oh, that's cool. And then it becomes a commodity and people want to steal it. And like, oh, this opens up all kinds of cool stuff we can do, So
And it kind of reminded me of, what kind of technology we lost when the library in Alexandria burned.
Oh my God, I
You
can't.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just some of the parallels and analogies are way cool. Anyway, yeah. Is that what you meant by size then, Jen?
I did mean scope. I did mean how big the
Yeah.
universe is. Yeah, absolutely. It spans time and light years, and it's just there's some. I love possibilities. I love opportunities. I love hope. It is my favorite thing about life. And that really carries in this universe with so much time and space to deal with. I mean, there's so much in there still to discover. And it's really, really exciting. And I'm so, yeah. I get really like choked up talking about
it.
It's huge.
Yeah. Which brings us to our last and potentially slightly more important, which was community.
Yes.
So what were your feelings about that?
One of the things that I love about having all of you guys as clients, coming from an editing perspective here, is that it's a different relationship than has been fostered with any other clients that I work with. This is much more of a collaborative effort, even with me. I get, and not just my editing stuff, like I get brought in about like the direction the story is taking and the characters and the covers and the shirts, like,
titles, the book titles,
everything. Yeah, the titles. A lot of those titles have come from my brain. And it's just, I've never experienced that kind of integration before. And I've always been worried, like, am I overstepping my bounds here? Michael's like, no, come on in. Like, what do you mean? There are none. And it's just, he's such an amazing person that he's really fostered the community that we have. And that can be seen. Right. People on it, just the fact that this podcast exists, which James, I know this was your brainchild, but that he has created a world that
and a culture.
Like, yeah, we can totally do a podcast and that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the fan page and the Patreon and the presence at conferences and all of that. And the conversations, like I love seeing names, like new people, maybe people who aren't new to the Aeon 14 fans group, but people that I haven't seen interacting before. And they're like, oh, I found this really cool article. I wanted to share it with you guys, and I love seeing that because these are people, everyday people who are feeling welcomed by this community and welcomed and confident enough to be like, I can share this with this group and they'll appreciate it and they'll like it and we can have a discourse about it. And it's really bringing people together over stories. And I think that's amazing because it relates to real life. And I think that's really important that art reflects life and that it's all about people. We're reading about people. We're talking about people. We are people. It's all just people. And we're all coming together. And it's just really incredible to see. And I think it's really important because that's what's going to keep it going. That's what's going to keep the love of these books going.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I kind of got ahead of myself earlier, but I absolutely agree with you,
Yeah. Me three.
Well, it's what makes it fun.
I mean, we're going to vote for Michael and Jill too.
I know. I mean, I kind of hate Facebook. In fact, was taking Michael's advice and like I unfollowed everything except for a few things because the Facebook group is positive for me. Like I enjoy that. It's not a negative influence in my life. So, I kind of divided it up between things that steal energy from me and things that give me energy because I just don't have enough of it. It's like I don't need any more taken from me. And the group has been that. But that's, you think about like, okay, if Facebook goes away tomorrow, what do we do? And like I could see the group just easily moving somewhere else.
Moving to whatever platform comes out.
Because the ideas are still alive and there's so much opportunity. Like that's the thing too. Like I think about the fact that like, OutSystem came out in 2012, but if you compare it to other like, other series in the genre, or there's so much opportunity to do more stuff, Michael's only at his first con and we've been talking about maybe piggybacking on or being part, or maybe moving around different cons, and that sounds like so much fun. Like I would love to do Worldcon, or for Jen and I, like Oricon is both here in Oregon, and I don't know, there's just so much fun stuff that we could do, and I'm really stoked about that. So yeah, and I think that's a really good point too about being. And he said that his background in software helped like with the collaborativeness, because some authors like are not willing to share, you know, and Michael has been pretty willing to bring ideas in and engage people. But I think that makes the lift easier for him too, you know, that we can assist, which I guess kind of transitions into our questions for the co-authors. But like, why, you know, for me, when it comes to being part, like one of the big reasons that I co-author, and Lisa, I'll ask you here in a second too. I'm not going to steal time, but you know, I have a job that I really enjoy. I'm kind of cursed right now to have two things that I really enjoy that both kind of actually provide income, but I don't see myself leaving my career right now, and so this allows me to engage with ideas and with readers and to write. And to be part of a community that is a lot of fun. And when it comes to writing, like, you know, yeah, income is great, but it's not, for me, the really fun stuff is being able to talk to readers and just create work. And so that this allows me to do that, you know, and I could see, as long as I can do it and I'm providing value to what AM14 is, I want to keep doing it, you know? So that's, we were joking the other day about like getting annual reviews, and because that's the main thing. Like every time Michael keeps talking about like, well, yeah, we should do this new series, and I map out like, because in my head I'm a planner, so I immediately start mapping out, well, if we're talking about 5 more books, that's a year, and we're talking about 2 5-book series, and then we just threw on another 3-book series that we're all gonna co-write together.
I know, yeah.
So like we're talking about like another 5 years pretty easily. So it's like, well, I guess that means he's, you know, happy with the way things are going.
Yeah, I know. I guess that means I got an achieved plus.
Right.
Exceeds expectations.
Yeah.
I know. So
bring the E back. That's just amazing.
So Lisa, I guess what do you enjoy about co-authoring, and what are you thinking about? You know, what do you want? Is it something you want to continue doing? Is it something that you know, your goal is eventually to move on into your own books, or?
Well, for one thing, as an author who is just entering into the genre, it's a huge. Michael is a mentor. He's an amazing mentor. He's so generous. Being a co-author means that I am freed from all of the burdens of marketing and all of the actual publishing chores of figuring out how to, you know, navigate through KDP, which is Kindle Digital Publishing, for those of you who aren't, you know, into that kind of stuff. That's a minefield that a new author has to learn how to navigate, and Michael's basically lifted that from us, which is huge. And it's I feel so incredibly fortunate to be in this position. Where I can write and I can create, and you know, the guy would say the sky's the limit, but the sky's not the limit. The boundary of the universe is the limit. I mean,
well, I know that we're writing in that's one of the really cool things. There's so much possibility. Yeah. I was kidding with him once, because you know, that's the other thing, is he's just focused on writing, which I also really appreciate that. Like he has a really good mind for the business statistical,
and he enjoys it too. Yeah, by the way,
and so that's,
which I think is kind of weird, but
because I've been, so, you know, I don't know if I talk about it that much, but I did try to start a business back before I re-entered writing, and it went very badly. Like working with, like, having a business partner, like I would never recommend anybody ever have a business partner, but one of the things that was really hard was communication got bad, and as the business really faltered, you could tell the communication got worse and worse. And that's not something I feel here at all. Like we have so many ways to communicate, but it's really a new publishing paradigm to me anyway. Like you've got, Michael has a brand that he created, and then he was already doing all the things of a small publisher. It was just he was publishing his own work, and Jill has, I mean, Jill doesn't want to be on the podcast, so we don't get to talk about her as much, but Jill has such a huge breadth of knowledge, and her own body of work, that has also helped. And so basically it's like you and I have a publisher. We just, nobody really articulates it in those terms. It's not, the easiest way to tell people when they ask me what I'm doing, I was like, well, it's like writing a Star Trek novel. It's like writing a Star Wars novel. Like, oh, I get it. Okay. It's in, it's in an existing IP with an existing publishing apparatus, and
IP being intellectual property.
Intellectual property. But it's also like, that's just a shortcut because it's so much freer. Like, we need to adhere to the existing continuity, but there's so much more freedom.
And someday we might end up, and Michael has been very generous to offer to, as Wooden Pen Press publish, should we decide to create our own pieces outside Aeon 15. Aeon 15. I'm already,
you're thinking already
so far beyond. But I mean, and we could, but I'm in the same position as James, where I really, I have a job I love with a company I love. I could see myself going part-time and doing more writing in Aeon 15 and maybe my own stuff someday.
You just did it again.
I did. Oh my God, I didn't mean that. Aeon 14. But, Hey, Michael. Are you ready for the next Aeon?
We're naming Aeon.
As soon as we get the Aeon 14 health plan, that's honestly the thing that, as soon as we get some health insurance figured out. And the university traps me because I get, my son can go to school for dirt cheap. So I need I need an educational benefit. Yeah. And once we get through that, then things get a lot easier.
Yeah.
But so how did you get involved in Aeon 14? How did you first, not Aeon 15, Aeon 14?
The first one?
I know, the first iteration.
I had actually found OutSystem as a book bub for 99 cents, and I bought it, and I started reading it, and I reached out to him. I thought, you know what, I bet authors don't get a whole lot of, and I know, because I, as an author myself, I, very, very few people actually reach out to you and say, hey, I like your work. Thank you for writing. It really touched me. And when an author gets that, it's very, very meaningful. And I wanted to pass that on to him. I wanted to say, hey, thank you for writing strong female characters. And going back into the role model thing, that was so important. I'm a pilot. I'm one of a few, and I'm also in sciences. My husband's a physicist. I have worked with him running linear accelerators for years, and yada, yada, yada. And he wrote back and he said, thank you so much. Oh, by the way, would you be interested in reading some of my stuff? And I went, sure, send it along. And that kind of evolved into him saying, sending me snippets and saying, hey, does this work? Is this, scientifically accurate? That kind of thing. And he would always, and he began to say things to me like, oh, this is really good. You should write for me. And I took that to be his way of just saying thank you. And I just kind of blew it off. And finally, he said, look, you need to tell me if you're not going to write for me, and I will stop pestering you. And I went, oh, crap, he's serious. And he knew I had written before, and he had read my humor blog, Life with a Physicist, all the way through, and said, hey, you're really funny, which I know is probably a surprise for people because I really don't think that my Aeon 14 books are funny. So anyway, that's how it kind of, and then I said, well, I get, I didn't, when I said, oh crap, you're serious? It goes, heck yes, I'm serious. I'll send you a contract right now. And that's how it happened.
I'm so happy it happened.
And you had, but now, had you written novel work before, or was it mostly short fiction?
I had written anthologies before.
Okay.
I'd written a novel before, but it had not been published.
Okay.
And it was science fiction. And it still hasn't been published, and it will never be published. But
wow.
And were you part of a writers group or anything?
No, I've been part of a poetry group. I've been but I've never been a part of a writers group before. I've always written, and I've written a lot of nonfiction for various magazines and stuff.
Oh, that is such an accomplishment. I mean, damn. I mean, Alpha Centauri I mean, both novels. Proxima Centauri just grows in scope and character, and Alpha Centauri is just so tight, and just was such a polished, accomplished novel. Wow.
You blew me away, seriously. When I read this, I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, because I always get nervous when I'm reading a
A
new
new,
author for the first
Yeah.
time. I'm like, what the hell is this going to be? But I was ecstatic. Lisa, seriously, I was giddy like when I was reading it, and I kept telling Philip, my partner, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. Oh my God, I'm so excited. And like, it just, yeah, I love it. I love
thank
it.
you. You guys just made my day.
Now you can never stop. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, somebody told me that once. I was like, a mentor I have in the area, we were talking about it. He's like, well, once you're on the treadmill, you don't get off. So decide when you want to get on.
Yeah. And then you're stuck forever. So how did you get started, James?
So I had, this is where I learned kind of the hard way that it is very, very helpful to be part of a team that, and a built-in audience with the marketing tools and all those things. Cause I had started a series, but I took it through Kindle Scout and did all that stuff, like was doing a lot of marketing things to try and promote it. And it just I mean, I got good reviews, but it just wasn't selling. And I look back now and I see all the mistakes that I made. But I was doing newsletter swaps are a thing you can do as an author where you kind of build relationships with other authors. And if you have a new release, you can ask them to, include it in one of their newsletters, and then that just sends it out to their audience. And so Michael was doing that, and he, as a promotional thing. And so we had done newsletter swaps a couple of times, and then he mentioned that he was looking for co-authors, and he said, check out the work and see what, he had read my first book and said he thought it might be a good fit. And so I read OutSystem and thought that, yeah, this could work. And so we just started, he invited me to the Slack channel. And I guess my biggest thing, because I'd been through it before with a business that didn't go anywhere. And the thing about a book, when you think about it, like, you're creating a product that could sell perpetually, or you could lose the rights to all your work and now it's just stuck somewhere. And I have writer friends that's happened. Like, they have books that they just don't have access to, that they put all this work into. And so it was really important to me to kind of know, I mean, I knew he was legit, but I didn't know how much of he was together business wise. And there's nothing worse than trying to get a problem solved with somebody that doesn't want to communicate with you. And so I didn't want to go through that again. But yeah, once I was in the Slack channel and I got a sense of how people were talking, and they all seemed like normal people to me, that were focused on doing something. That was the ethics. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's when I was like, yeah, I'll do this. And so I wanted to really demonstrate to him that I could do it. Because quite honestly, I had not written books on this timeline before, the level of we've
every 90 days.
Yeah. And we've talked about the pantsing versus the plotting. And pantsing just doesn't work, and I wasn't as much of a plotter. So I really had to change the way I do things to see if I could even do it, what needed to be done. And so, but yeah, that's kind of how it came about.
That's very cool.
And I did even, Michael's very respected in the publishing, the independent publishing space. And I wasn't quite aware of that. I just thought he was, a science fiction author. And so, but yeah, it's been, I'm really glad that it's worked out the way that it has.
Oh, and the books are just amazing. James, I really love the Lissa books, the whole Sentience Wars.
It's been
such a great job.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's crazy that when you look back and you're like, man, just a year, it's a little more than a year now, but to write that much in a year, among other authors that I've had been writing with, it's unheard of.
and what you guys who are watching or listening may not know is, and Michael has said several times in Slack, which I think is freaking impressive, is that basically James has written more words in 1 year than a lot of very well-known, established, traditionally published authors have written in an entire career. And that's amazing.
We could probably do a whole other show on that, because I mean, we're in a weird time with publishing right now. So many, writers are changing. Readers have, like they want the work as fast as they can possibly get it, but that means that you got to change the whole process. And
and to keep the quality there is that's probably one of the more amazing things that Michael has accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's having the whole team around it.
Yep.
So Jen,
Okay,
what keeps you wanting to edit Aeon 14? Because it's
and
complicated. Go ahead. Yeah, how did you get involved?
Yeah.
So I was part of the 20 books to 50K group because I've done some editing for the LMBPN company.
Which is Michael Anderle's company.
Anderle's.
Yeah, so anyone who's read Catherian Gambit, that's where Jen started, or that was just you had gotten involved with that?
That's kind of where I started.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then, so I was part of the 20 books group, and I didn't know who Michael Cooper was, but he had put out a call on Facebook. He's like, hey, I need some editors. Is anyone interested in taking that on? And I am so happy that I was like one of the first people to respond to him, because I had just started and I was still building my confidence and figuring out what my quality and my worth is for editing. I have a much better idea of that now. And I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, like I'm interested. That sounds great. And so we talked and he's like, yeah, you sound like a good fit. Okay, come on over. And so he like invited me to his Slack channel, and I had no idea who he was. I had no idea how big a deal this was. He took a chance on me, and I advocated for myself, and I was in the point in my business where I was saying yes to everything to like build a foundation. And holy crap, what a foundation I got to build.
No kidding.
It just came together like by complete and utter accident. And I'm glad I was on Facebook all of the time, because if I wasn't, I could have missed out on a really incredible opportunity.
Jen, I think you just named this podcast.
What?
He took a chance on me.
That sounds good.
And it just, I'm so lucky. And he always tells me he wishes he found me like years ago. And I'm like, you and me both, buddy. But like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
It was such a serendipitous freaking accident, man. And I'm so happy. That was over a year ago at this point. And I've been so grateful for the community, and because it can be a really isolating thing. It can be a really isolating thing. I work from home, I don't get out very much because I'm working all of the time. But I get to talk to you guys on Slack and do this podcast and talk to the fans on the Facebook page. And I don't feel alone. And that's kind of awesome.
Serendipity. That's another awesome word.
I love it.
Slack is our very early link. That's really,
Yeah.
As soon as we get it implanted, that's going to be.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, get on that, would you?
I know.
Oh, and what keeps me editing is everything we've talked about. But I mean, especially just, Lisa, you talked about Cooper as, I call him Cooper, as being a mentor, and you're absolutely right. I mean, he's such a force in my life. And he's just a really good, he's there for everything. Like I can vent to him. I can ask him questions about like business stuff. I can talk to him on a personal level. It's really a friendship. And I'm the kind of person, I do anything for my friends, anything for them. And so, I mean, even if I was getting disheartened by this job or disillusioned or whatever, I would probably still edit for him, because it's quality work. It's amazing people. And I love being a part of it,
one thing I wanted to say, I had in my notes for this episode, was that I often feel that Michael is a bigger advocate for my work than I am. He has defended my work or parts of it where I'm just like, well, no, I'll change that. It's okay. And he's like, no, this is good. Yeah. This will not change.
Yeah.
And I really,
I've had the same experience. Yeah.
I really, that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
So. I talked to him about, cause I go to other author meetups and stuff and, hand out my card, and I'm still refining my client base. And I tell him so many times I get asked, well, who do you already edit for? And I hate answering that question because to me, it shouldn't freaking matter, right?
Mhm.
I want to make my own distinct impression, and either you want to work with me or you don't.
Mhm.
But the second people find out that I edit for him, it is a game changer. They're like, oh my God, give me your card. And I'm just like, okay, but I don't take credit for his fame. He was a thing before I came along, and I feel like I don't want to ride his coattails. And he's like, what are you talking? Write him. Have him. He's like, I'll give you a glowing.
I mean, not to get too woo-woo about it, Jen, but
please.
Energy, like energy is going to draw like energy, right? So Mike, that was totally hippie Eugene, like Oregon talk right there. But I think that Michael and Jill's energy draws people to them that are kind of on the same wavelength, right? So we're all just like the Facebook group. I'm getting totally woo-woo for everybody in the Facebook group. You didn't realize that your energy is drawing others but no, I think that's, I would hope that I could
fit. We all click.
I would hope that I could help anyone out in any way if it's all possible. I want to be able to do that. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I love you guys so much.
We have all the feels.
So I think we've gone, now that we're ending on that emotional high note. I know. Now we need to sucker punch. Like, what can we do to So I think we've gone more than an hour. So
we warn you guys out.
Yep. We want to thank everybody for listening. And as always, if you've got any comments about the show, check in with the Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/Aeon14 fans, or you can just search for Aeon 14 fans and you'll find it. So if you got any ideas, we're happy to answer questions, and I think we actually have some questions to answer, so we'll get those in the next episode, we promise.
And Michael will be joining us again.
Yeah, since Michael wasn't going to be in this one.
So we won't go off the rails quite so
much. Yeah, I know. But anyway, thanks for listening, and we will see you on the Intrepid. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.